This is CBC Here and Now.
From here to the commode, from the commode over to the bed to here.
That's her whole life. Not a good life.
Why this St. John's woman is stuck in her bedroom. We'll find out what's standing in the way of an accessible apartment.
This has made a substantial change and a dramatic impact on the housing market and what people can afford, or in some cases, what they're going to be able to renew.
Interest rates have spiked. It's the biggest jump in more than 20 years. We'll find out what it means for your finances. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan. We start tonight with COVID news. More people will now be able to get vaccinated. The new group to get a fourth shot is people over the age of 50. Vaccinations for them are going to start a week from today. As well as being over 50, you need to be 20 weeks, almost 5 months, from your last dose. And if you have COVID, you need to be recovered. But today, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Janice Fitzgerald, said you might want to wait another 3 months after that to ensure maximum protection. She says if you're healthy, you may want to wait until the fall to get boosted.
We know that 3 doses of the vaccine are quite good at protecting against severe disease, even 6 months from your last dose. And while COVID-19 is circulating now, we anticipate that there will be another increase in cases in the fall as people move inside and respiratory illnesses increase. Delaying that second booster may help provide the best protection at a time when it will be needed most. The fall may also see the availability of new vaccines that are targeted to the Omicron variant.
Now, weekly COVID-19 numbers show the number of people in hospital has dropped. It's down to 3. That's the lowest number since January. There have been 4 deaths in the previous week because of COVID-19. The Chief Medical Officer of Health said today that there is a new wave coming. It's already started in Newfoundland and Labrador, and it's all thanks to the new variant BA5.
We can expect to see an increase in hospitalizations as well over the next 2 to 3 weeks, as we know that is a lagging indicator. The increase in cases is expected given what we are seeing in other jurisdictions with the BA5 subvariant.
So how bad will it get, and why aren't younger people able to get that second booster? I'll have more of your questions and some answers from Dr. Fitzgerald a little later in the show. Well, a woman in St. John's says she's trapped, stuck inside a room, and stuck on a waiting list for accessible housing. Phyllis Churchill has been looking since last year for an accessible housing unit, but she still hasn't been able to move. Here Now's Garrett Berry visited her.
Welcome to Phyllis Churchill's world. About 3 meters long and 3 meters wide. What you see, this is it.
From here to the commode, from the commode over to the bed to here.
And that's your life?
That's my life this past 2 years.
Churchill is a prisoner inside her own bedroom.
Well, the only word I can really think of is isolation. She's isolated from everything.
About 4 years ago, she was diagnosed with cerebellar ataxia, which makes it hard to move. She needs a walker or a wheelchair, and this apartment just isn't designed for that.
Like the nice summer, she would love to be outside and she can't go out.
There are 2 sets of stairs at the beginning of Churchill's house. Upstairs, where she spends all her time, and downstairs there's a TV room, a kitchen. That for her, it might as well be in another country.
Hours and hours, isn't it?
On her iPad, she paints oceans, beaches, and houses. The last time she sat outside, in the world that she paints by numbers, that was last summer.
She's struggling, I think. She tries not to let on, but we can kind of tell. Sometimes she has down days.
Since last year, they've been looking for a new place on the rental market, and with Newfoundland and Labrador Housing, where she is currently a client, she knows her family is concerned.
They don't like it either. They're worried sick about me. And they don't like it. Like I said, I've been trying to get someplace to live, and I'm hitting brick walls. I can find nothing, not a thing.
We took Churchill's story to the man in charge, the minister responsible for Newfoundland and Labrador's Housing Corporation. We showed him parts of this interview. He agrees.
The particular housing unit she's in obviously is not for her now is she finds it's not suitable.
So what will they do about it?
Within our own housing stock, that is a challenge because we just do not have the units. We are looking to build new, but that's not going to happen today. So the other option is that we use what we call our rent supplement program so that we can find and support somebody to move into the private market.
That private market where they've already been looking.
And given the current market conditions, that even has become more of a challenge.
For Phyllis, her challenge is the waiting and only dreaming of getting out of this room.
She'd be able to go out in the kitchen and eat her breakfast, than opposed to eating it up here and like just downstairs watching TV and doing stuff like that. So yeah, that would be amazing.
Garrett Berry, CBC News, St. John's.
The federal and provincial governments have committed to spending almost $10 million for patient-oriented research at Memorial University. Both the federal Minister of Health, Jean-Yves Duclos, and the new provincial Minister of Health, Tom Osborne, were on hand for the announcement. Patient-oriented research engages patients as partners, focuses on patient priorities, and aims to improve their outcomes. The research is led by a Memorial University group called Support NL.
It's really getting the patient's experience to help the research to be the most effective it can be. So making sure your question is the right question, that the answer you get is interpreted in the correct manner, and that the results are out there for everybody to understand, because traditional research and knowledge translation mechanisms like publishing have about a 20-year cycle before that knowledge actually hits the pavement, if you want. We want to speed that up.
Now, reporters also asked the federal and provincial ministers about the province's call for more federal funding for healthcare. Well, the federal minister left little doubt that there will be more healthcare funding from Ottawa.
As we recognize this shared responsibility, recognize the jurisdiction that provinces and territories have in managing healthcare systems, we need to focus on results. What type of results do we want to achieve together? How do we want to, and that obviously, that answer comes mostly from provinces and territories. How do provinces and territories want the federal government to support some particular results? So what type of results do provinces and territories want to achieve with the contribution and the support of the federal government?
So I look forward to working with Minister Duclos. I know the Premier and the First Ministers are working with the Prime Minister. This is an issue that every Premier and every Health Minister across the country want to deal with, and I look forward to the collaborative discussions with Minister Duclos.
Well, it's a perfect evening to step outside and talk about how beautiful the weather will be over the next little bit, particularly as we head through the evening hours tonight. I wanted to share something with you, which if you were outside, I'm sure you saw this. Take a look at this picture Mark Gray captured of the full moon rising in Bonavista last night. And it looks like, well, it will be. It was full this afternoon at about 2:30, but this is the buck moon, and that is the full moon in July. And the reason why it's called the buck moon is because it is when the antlers push out of the foreheads of the new bucks. So certainly going to be a beautiful evening for it. At least it looks like right now. If we take a look at where that cloud cover is, it is moving further east, but the full moon should start rising around 9:30. So hopefully some of us will see that as we head through the night tonight. We do have some rain in the forecast for some areas, but another beautiful day on tap tomorrow. I'll get into the full forecast coming up.
After 60 years of service, the old Coast Guard building on Southside Road in St. John's is coming down. Work has been underway for a few days now as crews demolish the former headquarters for the Coast Guard in St. John's. The work will consist of demolishing and deconstruction of all the components of the building, including removing any hazardous waste. The new building opened in 2019, and when the work here is done, the site will be paved to make parking for it. Well, the Canadian Coast Guard's latest vessel was officially revealed today. The Canadian Coast Guard held a dockside ceremony to welcome the John Cabot into service. It's going to be based in St. John's. It's the third of 3 offshore fisheries science vessels built under the government's national shipbuilding strategy. The vessel is like a floating lab, outfitted with the latest research tools, and will be used to measure things like cod stocks. The ship will be sailing from St. John's. It has been already for more than a year, but the pandemic stalled the plans to officially unveil it.
The pandemic interrupted some of our plans earlier, but it is a great moment today to, after the ship being here for a little over a year. The ship has been sailing in Atlantic Canadian waters, carrying out trials and starting to do important surveys on behalf of science. And it sailed into the harbor here in February of 2021 and has been working ever since. So a very important day for all of us today to officially welcome it to the family.
We collect data about all the types of fish that we get it in the trawler, and that include the data that we have it mainly to assess our commercial species, some cod and shellfish as well.
Well, in other news, police ticketed the parents of 3 kids on Friday for driving dirt bikes without supervision. The RCMP stopped an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old on dirt bikes for driving more than 50 kilometers an hour on the road between Summerford and Cottlesville. Shortly after that, the same afternoon, police stopped a 13-year-old driving 76 kilometers an hour on a main street in Summerford. Police say anyone under 16 using an off-road vehicle has to be supervised by a licensed adult driver. The RCMP said in May 2020 there were 33 fatalities involving off-road vehicles. When the cod fishery collapsed in the early 90s, its devastating effects hit every corner of Newfoundland and Labrador. But no place felt it quite as hard as Trepassey. A vibrant town of 1,500 people was reduced to a ghost of its former self. But everybody has something worth clinging on to. Ryan Cook brings us the story of how a few hundred people were determined to keep their hometown alive.
The highway to Trepassey isn't easy, but the view at the end of the road has a way of making people forget their troubles. And this town has troubles.
It's very sad. It's very sad. I mean, I'm actually seeing houses here, modern homes, being sold for pennies.
Everywhere Wayne Cave looks, there's the remains of what this place used to be. When cod collapsed in the early 90s, Trepassey was one of the first casualties. The fish plant closed, and 600 people were thrown out of work.
The last fish that I filled on the plant was October the 7th of 91.
You still remember the day?
I remember the day. It's the last fish I filled it.
Wow.
So we were done. The plant was done at that time.
Yeah.
Right.
How much did that job mean to you at the time?
That job meant everything to me.
A fog of uncertainty shrouds Trepassey and a dozen other towns on the southern shore.
Black day, very black day.
The fish plant has been the economic mainstay in the area for almost 30 years. Today, FPI shut it down for good.
It can survive as a small ghost town. I mean, people are going to have to leave the area if we don't get a buyer in or get some prospective buyers in the very near future.
Rita Pennell was mayor when the moratorium came down.
I don't know how a town can survive, especially a fishing town, if there's no fish.
30 years later, she's still wondering the same thing.
In that time, some of the younger people started to leave because they knew there's no future here for young people.
And what happened to the population then?
The population began to drop. It took a while, but we had over 1,600 people, and right now we just have around 480.
Just before the moratorium, there were more than 700 kids in Trepassey. Today, there's 35.
When you have no youth, you have no future, really.
But for the 400 or so people who stayed behind, the story of Trepassey is about more than just loss.
Resilience, like I said, stubbornness, stupidity.
John Devereaux's accountant told him to never make a business decision based on emotion. But John's mother, Carol Ann, says her son was never a very good listener. The Devereaux left Trepassey in the early 90s, but felt something pulling them back here about 7 years ago, back to their hometown and back to their old family business.
John called and he said, I think we're going to buy the inn from Dad. What do you think? And I said, I think you're crazy, but what do you want me to do?
The edge of the Avalon Inn has become a hub for the town. Live music, good food, craft beer. If Trepassey is going down, the Devereaux want to make sure it's not without a pint.
Yeah, there's something about it that draws you here, isn't there?
Yeah, we're a resilient bunch. Newfoundlanders are resilient, but I think Trepassey people are very resilient too.
We wrote the book.
Wayne Cave knows a thing or two about resilience. He reinvented himself after the plant closed and went crab fishing. It wasn't great, but it was stable enough to stay and raise his 4 kids here.
What was it that kept you here, though? I mean, you could have done that anywhere. What was it that kept you here in Trepassey?
This is my own. This is my own town. I wasn't born there, but I was raised there, right? So where else are you going to go and get settled in? That's good.
Yeah.
And fast cars, fast cities, more money. No, that wasn't for me.
And then there's Rita Pennell. At 85, she's still the mayor, and she's not even ruling out another term. She's seen Trepassey go from a highlight of the fishery to a shadow of its former self, but she's never stopped fighting for this place.
I love this town, and I have no intention of leaving. My family are all everywhere, but they keep coming back and forth, so I'm staying as long as possible.
What would it take for you to have to leave here?
They might have to take me away in the ambulance.
In many ways, Trepassey is the story of the cod moratorium in Newfoundland and Labrador. For every rural gem that reinvented itself as a tourism hotspot, there's many more places like this, where people resist demographics, economics, and even common sense, because their home is worth fighting for. Ryan Cook, CBC News, Trepassey.
Oh, we saw a big jump in the humidity today across parts of eastern Newfoundland. I'll tell you how long that's going to stick around. Have a full forecast coming up.
Ashley, I think we're going to keep you around with the nice weather you've been bringing us. Really look forward to you joining me here on the desk with more good news.
Yeah, that's right. I was just outside, obviously just outside, and somebody else said the same thing to me. So you're welcome for the nice weather, for sure. Here anyway, not the case up across Labrador. We've been seeing lots of rain. And not exactly the nicest start to summer for sure, but let's take a look at those temperatures today. Very summer-like across the island. 24 degrees in St. John's today. That was actually the hot spot. As you head towards central, just a couple of degrees less than that, and then along the south coast as well, 15 degrees in Burgeo today. Temperatures just in the single digits for northern Labrador, coastal areas anyway. 7 degrees in Makkovik today, and then a bit warmer for Cartwright at 17. So taking a look at what's happening out there right now, beautiful evening still. A little bit breezy though. Those winds are around 40 kilometers per hour at the moment, and that humidex has dropped a little bit. So it's 23 degrees right now, feeling more like 26. Not a whole lot of gusty winds out there, but certainly seeing that humid air. So dew point sitting at about 14 right now. You take a look at the current humidex and temperatures across the island. We are seeing still some humidity through central, the west coast. Deer Lake is feeling like 27 at the moment. And as we head through the next couple of days, well, the day tonight really, we're going to see some drier air move in. So that means that the dew points will drop and it'll be a little bit more comfortable through the day tomorrow, except for eastern Newfoundland, where those humidex values will still stay probably in the mid to high 20s through the day. And then as we head through the weekend, really most of eastern half of the island will stay fairly humid, some drier air continuing along the west coast and up across Labrador. But as we get into next week, we should start to see more widespread areas of humidex values into the mid-20s or even high 20s as we get through Mondays, as our dew points sit between 12 and 15 degrees. So taking a look at what's going on right now, we have an area of low pressure to the north, another one to the south with a cold front extending, and there it is there. And that's where some of that drier air is. And as it continues to track a little bit further east, we're going to see some of that drier air move in. So up across Labrador, the heaviest cloud cover at the moment, and that's been where all of the rain has been as well. If we take a look at some of the numbers from yesterday through to either this morning or this afternoon, depending on when your rain ended, Churchill Falls saw 60.7 millimeters of rain. Happy Valley Goose Bay around 42 millimeters, Lab City 22.9, and Cartwright around 20.9 millimeters. So the heavy rain has since ended. We're still looking at the potential for some showers though along the coast of the Big Land. Otherwise, a quiet evening tonight. And then as far as the island goes, northern peninsula, you've been seeing some cloudy skies for a good chunk of the day. You may see a few showers here and there, but overall your trend should be clearing tonight. And then along the south coast, particularly Burgeo eastward is where we'll likely see that fog develop through the overnight. And again, because some of that drier air will already start to work its way towards the southwest. Even some drizzle possible. And then along southern Avalon as well. That's what you're looking at as far as your forecast goes tonight. Temperatures are going to stay relatively mild, 16, 17 degrees for the eastern half of the island. The winds will stay a bit breezy though, out of the southwest between 30 and 50 kilometers per hour. Winds will ease along the west coast. Again, temperatures for the northern peninsula into the single digits. Same thing up across Labrador. Can't rule out the chance of a few showers for you in Lab City. And again, that rain will continue for northern areas. Now, as we head through tomorrow, looks like a beautiful day for the most part. We may see some cloud cover stick around for the first part of the morning, but overall just some high cloud will be the story. Across Labrador, you're looking at a generally unsettled day, some showers, but also some sunshine in the mix through the afternoon. And then we'll see those clouds on the increase as we get into Thursday evening and overnight for most of the island on Thursday night. As far as temperatures go tomorrow, another beautiful day. You're going to note the winds will shift though. They'll change to easterlies and then the temperature will dip. So although we'll sit around 22, 23 degrees tomorrow in the metro area, as soon as those winds shift, you'll see a big drop in those temperatures. As you head towards central, those temperatures into the 20s, 24 in Gander, lots of sunshine, a little bit more cloud cover for the south coast. West coast looks beautiful tomorrow. The winds out of the northwest, 15 to 20 kilometers per hour, but your temperatures will be sitting between 16 and 23 degrees, and Northern Peninsula back up into about 19 for St. Anthony. So a beautiful day. Winds a bit breezy in the morning for you along the coast, but they should ease as the day goes on. And then again, few showers possible here and there across Labrador, but overall not a bad forecast for tomorrow. We'll get into the long range forecast. Already looking ahead to the weekend when I come back.
An individual is looking at maybe buying that $15,000 or $18,000 Skidoo next year. They're not going to necessarily step forward and do that.
The biggest interest rate jump in more than 20 years. How exactly is that going to combat inflation? And will it cool a hot housing market? And it's time to talk tomatoes. Carolyn Stokes may be on vacation this week, but she's still here to bring us the latest in her gardening series. In a surprise move, the Bank of Canada has increased its trend-setting interest rate by a full percentage point. It now sits at 2.5%.
An increase of this magnitude in one meeting is very unusual. It reflects very unusual economic circumstances.
It's the biggest interest rate in more than 20 years, interest rate hike rather, as the central bank works to drive down inflation. Today's increase had been expected to come in at 0.75% or 75 basis points. The increase will affect Canadians with variable rate mortgages and lines of credit. The Bank of Canada says inflation here is being driven by consumer demand. It hopes that by making borrowing more expensive, that demand will ease and allow supply to catch up. So what does this big interest rate jump mean for you and your finances? Well, let's talk to Larry Short. He's a senior financial advisor with Short Financial, and he's with us to break it all down. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
So a 1% jump in the interest rate in one day. It's something we haven't seen it since the late 90s. How surprised were you by this?
Not very. We were thinking somewhere between 0.75 and 1.25 was realistic. A lot of the comment was at about 0.75, but quite frankly, the central bank, the Bank of Canada, has been saying that they've been, quote, behind the curve, which means that they felt that they should have raised interest rates higher earlier. So not that big of a surprise.
Let's look at the impact. For people who are renewing a mortgage, or if they're looking for a home and they're getting a mortgage now, how big of a change does this make the amount of house they can afford and those monthly rates they're going to be paying?
This could be quite substantial. There are various tables online that indicate just over the last number of months, because this is a change that's been happening effectively since last May, really. And in that period of time, individuals who could, generally speaking, all things being equal, because whatever you use, average formulas, it's not specific to the individual circumstance. But we've seen circumstances where people who could afford an $850,000 house are now down to $550,000, $600,000. So depending on other factors, this has made a substantial change and a dramatic impact on the housing market and what people can afford, or in some cases, what they're going to be able to renew.
Give me an idea. How much have the rates that you can get on a mortgage changed over the last year?
Well, May of last year, we were looking at 1-year rates at about 1.84% for a mortgage. And again, this is going to vary dramatically by the issuers. The smaller issuers, the smaller trust companies tend to be more aggressive in their offering of. They tend to have lower mortgage rates than some of the larger banks. Or even some credit unions. So it really pays to shop around. But last year, we're looking at 1.84% for 1 year versus 4.75 to 5% for the 1-year rate. And for 5-year rates, last year we were about 2.09%. Now we're looking at somewhere around 5 and a bit. And often you'll see what's called a posted rate, which is when you go into the bank or trust or credit union, they'll have a rate on the wall. And that is the posted rate. And you might have to finagle a bit and say, can you do any better? Or better yet, get one bank competing with another to see how low you can squeeze them.
Give us an idea. Who are some of the other winners and losers when it comes to raising interest rates?
The biggest losers are probably those individuals who have a lot of money borrowed on what's called a home equity line of credit. They're also called HELOCs. But basically, it is the line of credit that many individuals set up over the last number of years to cover off some expenses. I'm part of a national committee with CPA Canada on financial literacy, and our studies over the years have shown that many individuals borrowed dramatically on that home equity line of credit to do things like go on vacations or buy mobile homes and that sort of thing. And those individuals in particular are seeing their variable rate increase quite significantly. So depending on an individual's handling of variable rates, that is on their home equity line of credit, et cetera, this could push some people into bankruptcy.
What's your recommendation for people who are feeling like they're kind of getting squeezed on both ends? They're now going to be paying more for things like a mortgage or a line of credit, but at the same time, they're also dealing with the rising cost of everything else in life.
Yes, so I've seen this many times in my career, 1990, 1992, 98, 2000, 2008, when interest rates were raised dramatically to fight inflation. It took a period of time of adjustment. We started to see a slowdown in the economy, usually a recession resulted, but not all the time. And then as the recession really kicks in, you start to see interest rates start to be cut. So this of all of the potential recessions that we have, that I've seen in my career, this one is the most advertised. Usually it comes like a thief in the night, and people wake up and find out that there have been layoffs and there have been significant downturns in the economy, whereas this one seems to be really publicized a lot. So bear with it in the short run is the only choice that we have. We can't not fight the increase in interest rates, but the key here is to shop around and potentially either choose to go a shorter term, 1 to 3 years, versus lock in the 5-year rate. But in order to make that decision, you need to sit with your financial advisor and say, what's best for you? If you're right on that margin and another increase in interest rates is going to push you over the edge, then it might be just best to lock in the best rate that your budget can afford. Whereas if you have a bit of leeway, you might say that 2-3 years hence, we should be through the recession and interest rates should start to fall again. And therefore, that's the period of time that you would lock in for.
Well, today we are going to talk tomatoes with Tim Walsh of the Botanical Garden. So Tim, I have to be honest, I've tried growing tomatoes many times in the past and I haven't had a whole lot of luck. It seems like so many things go wrong. They're very finicky plants. What are some of the basic things people should keep in mind when they're growing tomatoes?
And in fairness to you, Carolyn, they can be a little bit finicky, no doubt about it, because they're a warm season plant, right? And they're not really plants that we like to put out too early. We also, though, have to start them a little bit early because we really want to put them out where they're already established a little bit, because we don't want to put seeds in the ground in the middle of June when the time is right, because then you're going to be so late. So what we do here and what all nurseries do, and a lot of home growers do, is they start them indoors first. And like all plants, they have basic needs. They need good soil, they need room to grow, and they need to be in the right environment with lots of the light that they need. They need shelter from the wind, which is probably one of the biggest challenges when growing tomatoes here. And of course they need food. So we'll go through all of those things. Okay. Yeah, so I've got a couple of varieties of tomatoes here right now, just to give us some examples of what you might expect to purchase. So, and tomatoes come in 2 different groups. One is the determinate or the shrub type tomato or the bush tomato. And as you can see,
little tomatoes on it?
Yeah, in this case they're very small. They're little. This is actually a variety called Tiny Tim, and it's been on the market since the 60s. It's a really reliable, really dependable cherry tomato.
Are they a bit easier to grow because they're smaller?
They tend to be a little bit less of a hassle in terms of the physical size of the plant. It still will need some support, however, and that's a little bit of a misconception that bush types don't need support. But because they do get bigger and because the fruit get heavy, the plant has a tendency to lean one way or the other. So you can put tomato cages around there, or a little sort of bamboo stick like we've got in here in this indeterminate type, and it just wants to grow big. It wants to grow tall, and you look at the physical difference between the two of these. And we actually already have this one supported on this bamboo stick here, because otherwise that would have already have flopped. And we want that plant to get tall because that's how it grows well and how it produces its fruit. We got to get this into a bigger pot, because while it looks nice and healthy now, nice plant, beautiful, hey?
Yep.
That's going to need room to grow. This plant is getting bigger. We're seeing lots of healthy growth here. That needs space to grow. Let's get some soil into here first.
Okay.
And so I've got some of our own mix here that we make here at the Botanical Garden, which is basically a compost mixed in with topsoil. And it's a really wonderful organic mix. If I squeeze that and I let it go, you see how that holds together nicely? But then if I touch it gently, it falls apart. That's a beautiful soil mix. So we're just gonna put in some soil here to kind of cover maybe almost, if we think about this root ball here, we're going down into the pot. So we want it to be maybe down a little bit. The beauty about tomatoes is that you can actually bury the stem a little bit.
Okay.
And it's actually helpful to do that, because what tomatoes have the ability to do is actually to root along the stem after you bury it. A lot of plants can't do that. A lot of plants don't like that, but tomatoes do very well with that. So now that we've got a nice base here now, you can kind of see how we're just going to seat that plant right in the middle. I had a look at the roots, and the roots are pretty good. Again, not too root bound, so we don't have to disturb that a whole lot. And I'm literally just going to seed it right in there, nestle it in, just twist it a little bit just to make nice little firm contact. And there's our plant there. Now, I'm actually going to bury the roots, and I'm even going to bury the stem a little bit. And before I do that, however, there's a couple of these leaves here I'm just going to pinch off because they're going to get buried anyways. So let's get rid of them.
Is there any benefit to pinching them off?
Yeah, well, it helps the plant, the stem here, just to kind of settle in. And now that stem will start to produce roots the minute it's actually buried. Now I'm just going to get some soil, put it around the root ball in order to bury that stem.
So I guess something to keep in mind when you're doing this is that this is going to be heavy.
Yeah.
So you probably won't want to carry it too far once it's all done.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so oftentimes we recommend when you're working with large containers like this, because we do quite a few of them here, barrels and big pots and things, and a lot of folks at home do, is that you plant it where it's going to stay.
Yeah.
So bring all the ingredients to your deck if this is where it's going to be, and then the planter can actually just stay right there, and you don't have to work too hard at trying to move it over to that choice spot in your yard. So that's looking pretty good there now. I like that. You know, it's got a nice solid center. As you can see, it's got lots of room to grow. We've got our beautiful little tomato here. We've got a little support in it right now. What's going to happen, of course, that plant is going to want to continue to grow, which of course we want it to do. This stake, believe it or not, is going to be inadequate after a while.
Oh, really? So what will you put there instead?
Yeah, so oftentimes you can literally replace it with just something that's a little bit taller. This is a piece of bamboo that we reuse over and over again at the garden. What's commonly used are these tomato cages, and they do all the work for us. And quite literally, it's a matter of just gently putting it down over the plant, being careful not to damage any of the leaves or the flowers, and press that into the soil. Yeah, we'll gently get those leaves up and out so that they can flush out into the sunshine, and make sure that's nice and firm in the pot. And look at that.
Excellent.
It's ready to go.
So you just leave it, you don't need to like tape it on or anything? You
No,
don't need
but
any...
yeah, what'll happen is it'll lean one way or the other, but it's got really nowhere to go. Sometimes you might want to, if you feel it, and it's leaning maybe a little bit one way or the other, you could just put a nice string that's not going to cut into the branch there or into the stem, and just loosely tie it to kind of make it a little bit more straight.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for this. I hope I have a bit more luck with my own tomatoes after hearing some of your tips. Really appreciate it.
I'm sure you will. You know, the tips are not complicated, and if we follow those basic steps, I think we'll all get some good produce in the end.
For sure. And if you folks at home have any questions or any topics that you'd like us to cover in these gardening segments, be sure to let us know. Just send us an email at hereandnow@cbc.ca.
Tomorrow on CBC Radio's Labrador Morning, find out about LabQuest, a one-week summer program for students in high school to explore potential healthcare paths. And on the St. John's Morning Show, find out why Metrobus ridership is up in the city. Well, today was the first briefing from the Chief Medical Officer of Health that we've had in weeks, and it contained a warning. COVID cases are increasing. It's fueled by a new subvariant of Omicron known as BA.5. I know you've got a lot of questions about the COVID situation in the province. Many of you sent me some questions for today's briefing. And at the briefing today, Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Janice Fitzgerald, laid out some of what this province is facing right now.
Certainly we know that the biggest risk with regard to hospitalization and severe disease are for those over 50. And given what we're expecting in the next few weeks, we felt that that would be the best place to put our efforts with regard to second booster doses. Younger people generally have a good brisk immune response to vaccinations, and so tend to be at lower risk for severe disease. Really, when we're talking about those under 50, given our rates at the moment, I think the focus really needs to be on getting that age cohort up to date, more so than focusing on second booster doses.
Well, there's Dr. Janice Fitzgerald explaining why it's only people 50 and above who are going to be eligible starting next week on Wednesday to get their second booster, which for most people is a fourth dose. So there maybe will later on look at offering it to younger people. Should note that Ontario today is making any adult available for the fourth dose. But what about masks? That's been one of the big topics, especially with more COVID spreading. And today, Dr. Janice Fitzgerald addressed it, saying that she would like to see more people wearing masks.
Keep that increase as low as we can, and we also want to slow the rate of transmission as much as possible. As Omicron has taught us, there's not a lot you can do to stop a runaway train in some ways, but infections happen, and people have thankfully been able to get through them for the most part fairly well. But I think that we certainly would encourage people right now to be wearing their mask, to make the choice to wear the mask, especially when they're going to be in a higher risk situation.
So is there any talk of making it mandatory, though?
Not at this time, no.
Some adults are on dose 4 for their vaccines, but for children under 5, there's still no vaccine available. Health Canada is reviewing the data on first doses, and the province is getting ready to deliver them eventually.
We have to consider that the supply of the vaccine may not be huge in the beginning. This is a completely new product, so it has to be manufactured as well. So we have to remember that. As we get more details and as we find out more about our supply, then we will certainly have more details to pass on to people.
So with today's warning that there is a new wave of COVID coming, how bad is it going to get? Well, Dr. Fitzgerald says they have done some modeling so that the healthcare system can prepare. And the good news is they think it's going to be manageable.
You're not expecting it to be any worse than what we've seen in the past. And, I think we've fared quite well, relatively speaking, with regard to hospitalizations. And our modeling has predicted that fairly effectively in the past. So, the expectation is that it'll take a couple of weeks for hospitalizations to peak. So we may see that end of July, maybe first week of August, and, looking most likely at mid-30s with regard to hospitalizations at any one time.
There is more anger over the police response to the deadly school shooting in Uvalde, Texas in May. It's over surveillance video that was released, which shows what officers did and didn't do as a gunman killed 19 students and 2 teachers. It was made public just hours before a rally on Capitol Hill calling for more measures to improve gun control. Katie Simpson was at the protest.
Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Hundreds of parents, survivors of gun violence, and activists are here on Capitol Hill, and they have a message for lawmakers. They are angry, they are frustrated, and they are emotional. They want to see a ban on assault-style weapons, especially in light of the surge in gun violence that has been experienced in the United States. In recent months, in recent weeks, there have been more than 300 mass shootings in the United States this year alone so far. Now, we spoke with some people in the crowd today, and they describe what it's like to live in America in this moment.
We're afraid. We're afraid to be standing here. We're constantly looking up, looking for shooters, afraid that a bomb squad's here. We're in constant fear, and it's not just us who are so privileged to be here and talk about it and talk to you about it. It's people who everywhere. It's mothers everywhere. I don't know any mother, any parent who's not afraid right now to be living here.
This rally is taking place less than 24 hours after security footage of the shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, was published by a Texas newspaper and a Texas television station. It is 77 minutes of footage. It is extremely difficult to watch. And in those moments, you can see when police first enter the building, they hear gunshots for the first time and retreat down a hallway. And that documents the 77 minutes they were inside that building before they actually entered the room and ended that massacre. There has been mixed, very strong reaction to the release of that footage. Some family members are deeply distraught that they did not see it first. Others are so angry with the actions of police that even though people knew the police response, it's already been highly criticized and is under investigation, but to actually see what was going on inside, it has left them even more heartbroken. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Well, we're getting close to the weekend, and it's looking like things are going to be a bit unsettled as we head through the day on Friday. A little bit of uncertainty in the forecast, but at this point, looking like we should see the sun at times across most of the island, even parts of Labrador as well, but it will be a bit unsettled. So we are looking at that chance of showers through the day as well, particularly as we head into the afternoon hours. Depending on the track and what happens with this, we may see a bit more sunshine in the evening hours for the eastern half of the island, but at this point showing a bit of rain as we head through the evening hours, especially up across Labrador as well. But I still do have that sun icon in the forecast for most of us. Temperatures should be sitting in the 20s for most as well, except single digits still up across northern portions of Labrador as you hang on to those cooler temperatures hovering around 7 degrees and then otherwise between 19 and 22 across the rest of the Big Land. Now, as we head into Friday evening and Saturday, things will start to get a bit better. We may see a bit more sunshine. Still going to hang on to the chance of showers, though, through a good chunk of the afternoon. Lab West, you'll see some sunshine as well. And as we head into the evening hours, that better chance of showers will move back in. So temperatures, again, not really moving too much, in the low 20s for the most part. And temperatures for the Northern Peninsula, Southeastern Labrador in the teens. Mid-teens at that, and then finally going to be back into the double digits for Nain. So 14 degrees and sunshine for your Saturday, so not too bad at all. But if we take a look at the long-range forecast, temperatures really not moving too much. They'll stay in the 20s. Overnight lows still in the teens as well. Again, hanging on to the few showers on Saturday, but Sunday and Monday looking beautiful at this point with some sunshine and temperatures between around 23 degrees for St. John's and Eastern Newfoundland. For Central Newfoundland, you're looking at a similar forecast, a bit warmer though, 24, 25 degrees through the day. And again, your overnight temperatures in the teens as well. So if you're planning on camping for the weekend, looks like a nice weekend to do that. And then for Western Newfoundland, some sunshine really right up until Sunday. And then Monday, you're looking at the chance of a few showers as well. Temperatures between 22 and 23 degrees. And then for Eastern Labrador, unfortunately, we'll see the return of some showers on Sunday, Monday as well. And then for Western Labrador, temperatures around 18, 19 degrees, so not too bad. And unfortunately, a bit unsettled through the rest of the week. Now take a look at this shot. Is this not incredible?
What a nice little visitor that kayaker had.
That is the ultimate kayak experience. I would be terrified, but the ultimate experience. Jim Walsh captured this in Bay Bulls, and I had to share it with you. I just love it. Thank you so much. If you have any weather photos you'd like to share with us, send them to Facebook, Twitter, or email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
See, that's the sort of distance you want to see the whale. The last thing you want is to be, I've seen some shots where they're like, kayaking right over, and underneath you're like, oh, look, there's a whale. Yeah, no, that's too close.
I just shared that on Twitter too. Yeah, I agree. That's a bit too close, but incredible nonetheless.
Well, and that's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching.
Good night.